The Basidiomycota, fungi with septate mycelium and sexual spores that are produced externally on the cell. So we can see a little bit of difference in between the Ascomycota and the Basidiomycota. We start out, down in the corner I've got this little diagram that shows these two little spores which were originally haploid. One was green and one was red. They started growing, they came in contact with each other. The hyphae fused you got with dikaryotic hyphae that now has one green and one red nucleus in it. We now have dikaryotic, which means that you've got two haploid nuclei, one from each parent in the same cell. The Basidiomycota includes some very interesting plant pathogens. These are organisms that are a little bit lower down within the Basidiomycota. One is Exobasidium. This is actually a leaf of a plant that has been infected by a fungus. We've got a mixture of some leaf tissue and a lot of fungal tissue that has got this totally distorted. If you look right above the leaf, you will see a little gall being formed. Again, this is due to infection by the fungus. This is Septobasidium. You can see this doesn't look like a very fancy sort of thing. It is called felt. You can see why it's what is happening here is there is an insect underneath of this which is removing nutrients from the plant, and the fungus is growing into the insect where it has paralyzed the insects. Insect cannot move, but the insect is still alive, continues to feed on the plant. It will continue to reproduce and produce offspring. The offspring start to develop. They will get attacked by spores. If they do leave this area, they will go out and they will carry the fungus with them. This is often found in orange groves that are very old, that are not being taken care of very well. This is another picture of felt developing on a citrus plant. And again, in this case, the way you control this particular disease is you actually apply an insecticide to kill off the insect that disrupts the entire disease cycle. These are very rudimentary type basidiomycetes. We're going to look at things where these sexual spores are produced externally to the cell. In that particular case, the most common thing you're going to find is a mushroom. You've seen mushrooms before, and they've got a lot of different shapes. One of the interesting parts of the gills up on top, on the side of the gills, is where we're going to find the sexual spores being produced. If we take that and we section it, this is a section of a gill, and you can see that on the outer parts of this, it's kind of different. That is the area that has what we call the hymenium, or the fertile layer. On that, you're going to find the production of basidia, which are going to produce basidiospores. Your mycelium goes, it divides, and finally it gets to a spot where a single cell is produced on the end. It is dikaryotic again. In that particular cell, you're going to get the formation, the two of them coming together. As they come together, you get the diploid phase. Then it is going to undergo meiosis. And as it undergoes meiosis, you get separation. Now, I've labeled these a little bit. So the green one now has a little bit of red on it, and the red one has a little bit of green on it. We now have 4 individual haploid spores start to make the little spores up on top. The nuclei migrate onto the inside of it, and we now have 4 basidiospores on the top. These are released in a lot of different ways. If we look at this, and I've superimposed that particular drawing onto this section of a gill, what you can see is in the center, we've got a cell that's sticking up. You can see the 4 little tiny, what we call sterigma. The part sticking up is the basidium, and you've got the basidiospores on the top of it, which are haploid. When you have a mushroom like that, it can produce millions or tens of millions of these, depending on the size of the mushroom. Here's another picture. As you see the little hat-like area, and you've got the 2 little sterigma. You can see the spores attached on the top of it. There's a difference between the haploid part and the diploid part and the dikaryon. The basidiospores are haploid. The mycelium is dikaryotic. It's only at that one little spot in there at a very short period of time that you've actually got the diploid phase occurring. These are just representatives of different kinds of mushrooms. This is a chanterelle. It is actually this yellow color. It's a very pretty thing. Fine edible mushrooms. You can see the lamina on it where the lamina are kind of bent around. They look like that. This is a mushroom, and you can see it's got an attachment down into the soil. These normally grow in the soil. They spend a lot of time growing in the soil before you actually get the formation of the mushroom up on top. This is your common mushroom that we put on food and everything. These are very nice mushrooms, excellent source of available protein. This is a rather bizarre group. This is called the bird's nest fungi. Starts out with these little egg shapes. These little egg shapes are kind of tiny. They're about the diameter of a pencil. When they open up, they become about the diameter of a dime. On the inside of it, you can see, if you look on the one on the left-hand side, a little bit above the middle, you see what looks like a bunch of little bird's eggs inside of this little bird's nest. Each one of those eggs is filled with Basidia and Basidiospores. These are very common on moist soil, and they're really kind of cute. You can see that they form in groups. This is a puffball. It's about golf ball size. Some of these are edible, some of them are not. So you have to be very careful to make sure you know what you're doing before you ever try and consume any of these things. This is an earth star. It's kind of like the puffball, but in this case, the outer peel of it bends backwards. As it bends backwards, it pulls the center part up. Drop of rainwater comes down, hits the outer part of it. It sends a puff of spores out the center. This is a giant puffball. I call it a giant puffball because it was about 4 inches across. It was rather large. This is what we call Pisolithus tinctorius. It's a closed up type puffball. You can see the little chambers on the inside of it. Each one of those chambers is filled with Basidia and Basidiospores. This particular fungus is used with pine trees. It forms mycorrhizal fungi with them. This is a nasty looking one. This is what we call a stinkhorn. You can smell these things at about 10 feet away. They really produce this absolutely disgusting smell. It smells like decaying flesh. That actually attracts insects to land on the upper part. They take the spores away and disseminate the spores. Again, you see these things coming up, but in reality, what's happening is it's growing underground for a long period of time, getting all the nutrients and energy it needs to be able to form these things almost overnight. This is one that was in my backyard. It looked like orange styrofoam. The center part has got this spore mass which really smelled bad. When we look at the Basidiomycota, we see a lot of variation. Think common mushroom, think organism that has mycelium. The mycelium is made out of chitin, septate mycelium, spores being produced external to the cell that produces them. Very large group of fungi, very diverse group of fungi. Some of these things, like I said, are quite large. Other ones may be kind of tiny. Some basidiomycetes produce what are called mycorrhiza on plant roots. Mycofungus rhizae roots. This is where the fungus comes in association with the plant root and causes a change in the morphology of the plant root. The plant root becomes thicker and often bifurcated. This helps the plant root absorb phosphorus. At the same time, it often affords a protection for the plant root because it will keep some pathogens out. Some plant species are obligate mycorrhizae species, such as pine, where they have to have the mycorrhizae associated with the roots or they will not be able to develop properly. There are a lot of different kinds of mycorrhizal fungi. This is a coralloid type mycorrhizae. In this particular case, you can see how it looks much like a coral. It is very branched. This should just be a single plant root coming out, but rather it becomes very differentiated like this. Mycorrhizae are extremely important on certain plants in order to be able to function properly. Ectomycorrhizae type here often occur on woody type plants.